The officer stood frozen, his mouth dry, his heart pounding in his chest. He had crossed a line, but he hadn't realized just how deep the hole he had dug for himself really was. The CEO's words echoed in his mind, sharp and unforgiving. You've just started a war that you're not prepared to fight. It wasn't just about the mistake of pulling over the man. No, this was bigger than that. It was about the officer's unchecked power, his ability to treat others as lesser simply because of the color of their skin. And now, the man he had threatened wasn't just anyone. He was someone who had the power to expose the officer's actions in ways he couldn't have imagined. But the officer wasn't prepared for what would happen next. Just as the man turned to leave, the CEO calmly placed a call that would forever change the officer's career. His fingers trembled as he dialed a number, the screen of his phone glowing in the darkness. Within moments, the officer's own phone buzzed. He looked down at the screen. It was a message from his captain. "We need to talk. Now." The officer's stomach twisted. There was no denying the connection. The CEO had used his influence, his network, to make sure that the officer's actions wouldn't go unpunished. An hour later, the officer sat across from his captain in the dimly lit office, the walls adorned with plaques and commendations. But today, none of that mattered. The officer's career was hanging by a thread. His captain's face was stone cold, unreadable. "Do you know who you stopped tonight?" the captain asked, his voice calm but edged with disappointment. The officer nodded, his throat dry. "Yes, sir. He's the CEO of Fortune 500 company." "And do you know what that means?" the captain pressed, leaning forward. "That means everything about your career just changed. Everything." The officer's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't realized the gravity of the situation until now. He had been foolish, blinded by his own prejudices. And now, the consequences of his actions were crashing down on him harder than he ever expected. "It means," the captain continued, "that you just harassed someone with more influence than you can comprehend. You've made this department a target, and now you're the one responsible for it. Do you understand what you've done?" The officer remained silent, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The captain slid a folder across the table. "This is the report we've just received. The CEO has already filed a formal complaint. There's an internal investigation starting tomorrow, and I'll be honest with you, this doesn't look good. The public's not going to care about your excuses. All they'll see is a cop who crossed the line." The officer's stomach churned. He could already feel the walls closing in on him. His career, his reputation, everything he had worked for, gone in the blink of an eye. But it wasn't just his job at stake. The investigation would open doors to a far deeper issue. The CEO's influence, his vast network, would ensure this didn't go unnoticed. This wasn't just about a bad traffic stop. It was about a systemic problem in law enforcement, one that had festered for years, unchecked and unchallenged. As the officer left the captain's office, he was summoned to the police station's back room where his supervisor awaited him. The air felt thick with tension. A series of questions followed, each one making him feel smaller, weaker. He was no longer the confident officer who had once walked the streets with authority. Now, he was a man facing his reckoning. But as the interrogation wore on, the officer realized something that would forever alter the course of the investigation. The CEO's call had brought more than just a complaint. It had brought a spotlight onto the officer's own past. For the first time, his previous infractions, his history of questionable decisions, were being scrutinized under a magnifying glass. The officer's career wasn't just under fire because of this one incident. No, it was the culmination of years of complaints, of questionable behavior that had flown under the radar. The CEO's influence had ripped away the veil of protection that had shielded him for so long. As the night stretched on, the officer found himself confronted with a hard truth. He had built a career on arrogance, on enforcing a system that allowed him to overlook the very flaws within it. But now, that system was coming for him. And it wasn't just about losing his job anymore. The investigation would expose everything. The CEO had done more than file a complaint. He had triggered a chain of events that would lead to an internal overhaul within the department. The public would demand answers. The officer was the face of a much larger issue, a culture of unchecked abuse of power that had gone on for too long. And now it was time for accountability. As the officer was escorted out of the station, his future uncertain, the CEO sat in the comfort of his office, surrounded by his team of lawyers. He had been calm, measured, and strategic in his approach. But this was far from over. The CEO knew that this fight was just the beginning, and the impact of this one confrontation would ripple through the system in ways no one could predict. The war had begun, and the officer, who had once felt untouchable, was now facing the harsh reality of his actions, asterisk asterisk. As for the CEO, his message had been clear: justice would not be denied.